Welcome everyone to our next installment of our virtual internship series. My name is Danny Rubin. I'm the founder of Rubin. We are a provider of online curriculum for business communication skills. Teachers in the chat, please give me a Zoom hand if your students send you emails that look like text messages. Any hands for that? Any emails that look like text? I see some hands going up. So we help students communicate professionally for college and career opportunities. And we also connect students with in-demand occupations. And that's why we're grateful to have Mr. Rodney Muterspaw, our special guest today on the world of criminal justice. We have Ms. Katie Swift here providing sign language for those who need it. And my teammate Mac Dowd is here. She'll be hanging out in the chat. If you have questions, she can keep track of that and answer it for you. And actually, Mac, I was remiss. Why don't you do it now? Provide the worksheet that we put out ahead of the webinar with some questions for our conversation. Throw that in the chat. Thank you. If you don't have it yet, please grab it. And before we get into our conversation with Mr. Muterspaw, he says Rodney, but it just feels so formal. Fine, I'll call you Rodney. With Rodney, the chief, as we'll learn, former chief of police. First, I'm going to share my screen and offer some resources, some information to the teachers, as we always do. So let me get that queued up first. One moment. There we go. All right. So this is for the educators here, okay? We always give out free resources to help students with their communication. This time around, we're giving out life skills resources. If you don't have these yet from us, we'd love to give them to you. Worksheets on how to shake hands, hold conversations, take a headshot, sign your name in cursive. Teachers, raise your hand if you want students to know how to sign their own name before they graduate. Signing your name. Emailing a teacher about a poor grade appropriately. Learning to respect the opinions of others. Never been more important in our world than now. So this is a Google Drive folder of worksheets for free. We'd love for you to have it and bring it into your classroom. We also always like to give out a worksheet, a one-page reminder of best practices for virtual presentations. How to prepare, what to go do before you speak, and as you deliver. So the life skill exercises and the presentation worksheet. If you don't have these resources from us yet, educators, and you would like it, here's all you have to do. Go to the chat right now, type the word interested and your email address. And if you're new to the Rubin community, what we like to do is schedule a brief phone call, ideally on Thursday or Friday of this week, to say hello, understand your program, and help you to implement these exercises into your class. If you're new to our community and you've never engaged with our content before, so it's a way to say hello and help you make sense of it. And if you would like these resources, please do so. And thank you, Renee. I just caught, as it's flying by, your comment. We love working with your team in Irvine. So again, you can feel free to keep that coming. This is for the educators only. I'll keep it going so we can get to our conversation. I also want to make everybody aware that our virtual internship series keeps on rolling, and our next session is on Tuesday, February 8th, also at 1:30. Exploring the world of sports medicine with a certified athletic trainer at a top tier high school for athletics outside of Washington, D.C. So she's dealing with some premier athletes who are going to go to Division I, Division II schools. And she's going to talk about how she keeps them healthy and safe throughout all the different sports seasons. So please join us on February 8th. You'll see emails about that. If you're watching us on a recording, many times teachers do, we're happy to give you our life skill worksheets as well. Just send us an email to support@rubineducation.com. We will give you the resources that way. And finally, everybody here today live with us will receive a certificate for being here, teachers and students. So look for that in your email on Thursday. Mac will send it out. So grab that certificate and post it, share it wherever you would like. Okay. So with that, I'm going to turn off the share. And I'm going to bring in our special guest, Chief Rodney. I'm going to keep coming up with different ways to address you. Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and give us your abbreviated bio? Okay. I know it spans a few decades of work in police work and criminal justice, but kind of take us from the start to now. and then we'll get into your career and ask some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Rodney Muterspaw, and I was the chief at Middletown, Ohio Police Department. I was here for 30 years, grew up in Middletown. Most of you might know Middletown from the movie Hillbilly Elegy and the best-selling book that's based on our city. The author is from here, and he's a friend of mine. And so it did really well. But I was born here, raised here, went to college, and came back and took the police test. There was 350 of us took it. They hired 5 of us. So it was the world then, because everybody was trying to do that job then. So got lucky, and they hired 5 of us. Went from patrol into bike patrol, was a school officer for a few years, and I kind of found my niche, went into undercover narcotics. Did that for a few years, got promoted, and took over that unit that I was once in and supervised the drug and vice unit for years. We worked a lot with the FBI, the DEA, and so forth, and tried to combat that. Went to supervision, and then I became the chief in 2014. That's right before the opioid epidemic hit the country. So I became chief at a really weird time because it was something that none of us could solve at the time. Throughout that was enabled to just do incredible work around the country with people. We took out some Mexican drug cartels out of San Diego and California area, came all the way here to the Midwest where they were bringing their dope in. Was very fortunate to go to the Presidential State of the Union and attend with the president in 2019, which was phenomenal. Went with a congressman there. So been exposed to a lot of things, have a lot of ideas from people around the country in law enforcement and outside law enforcement. So it's been a great career. I retired about 2 years ago at the age of 50. I figured 30 years was enough in that job. So now I'm actually on Middletown City Council, where I was once the police chief. So that's kind of my story and where I'm at. So I'm excited to be here, and whatever questions you can have or I can help you with. I kind of left off the book, wrote a book.
That was the next thing I was going to do. So I got you covered on that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'll let you talk about that then. So
yeah, well, I want to get into that, and try, if you can, your audio is a little scratchy. Try to stay like looking straight at the camera, kind of try to stay like right towards us, and it'll maybe hold the audio a bit better. So first of all, we focus in our program, in our webinars, a lot on employability skills, and we talk a lot about the power of specifics and numbers and owning our own experiences. Can the students tell me, who heard him say at the beginning, when he tried out or applied to be a police officer, how many people applied and how many people were selected? Did anybody catch those 2 numbers? Can you show me in the chat the 2 numbers that I heard? What were the 2 numbers? 5 people were selected out of how many? Thank you, Deanna. 350 and 5, right? So that really helps to show how competitive it was, right? So when we think about our own resumes, our own stories, what numbers can you share about what you've done so people understand the importance of your work? So numbers are really powerful for all of us, and we want to call them out in our sessions when we hear them. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. So thank you for your background. I did want to mention, and I'm gonna keep it next to my chest because the blue background hides it. This is your book. It's called The Blue View, and it's essentially a journal of all of these anecdotes over your many years in police work about the highs, the lows, the funny, the sad, the frustrating, everything that is encompassed in a police officer's career. First of all, I just wanted to, again, get to these employability skills. I went on Amazon, I bought this book, I've been reading through the book, I've been making notes of things I want to ask you. What does it mean that prior to the interview, I did that type of homework, that I actually have the book, I was studying it, understanding it? What does that mean for someone to come into a job interview, having already sort of researched the employer or the business? What would that say to you?
Preparation is everything. And as a boss or as a person who hires, like I was for years, I know when somebody comes in prepared. Because I would always ask them, they come in, why do you want to work at Middletown? And some people give the standard answer, well, I want to help people. Well, I'm not looking for that. I'd have people come in and say, well, Middletown's a population of this amount. I know you guys are battling the opioid epidemic. I know how many police officers you have. I know what you offer. Here's what I can do for you. And those are the people that we look for that prepare themselves for that job.
Wow, that's a great answer. And I hope that students are really taking note of that you come into the room with your homework, because everyone else gives these standard answers and you could really stand out by being prepared. So I tried to be as prepared as I could by reading through some of your experiences. And as we talk about some of this, I want to invite the teachers and students now to please go to the Q&A area along the bottom row of Zoom. Go to Q&A and please start entering your questions for Rodney. Put your questions, and next to your question, put your name and your school so we can give you proper credit in our session today for your questions. So start asking your questions, and I will start pulling them out as we go along in our conversation. So as I was going through this book, it really shows every day you have really no idea what you're about to step into. And every day is just a total like, well, suddenly I'm in this environment. It could be safe. It could be dangerous. You don't quite know. I did want to ask you, sort of looking out over your career, what do you think has been consistent in law enforcement over those 30 years? And then what has changed over those? Start with what's been the same, no matter what the year, the era, the culture, what stayed the same, and what is different today for students who are entering the field?
The people have never changed. When I came on in 1990 and I retired in 2019, the people never changed. You're always going to have people out there that cause problems. You're always going to have people that need help. That's a constant. That's never went away. That did not deviate at all from the time I got started. What's changed is technology. When I got hired, I mean, when we had to make a phone call, you had to drive to a payphone and call dispatch to see what they wanted. There was no GPS on the cars. There was no in-car computers. There was no body cameras. So it's totally changed policing the way it should be, I think. The technology is just remarkable compared to what we had when I came on.
Thank you for that answer. And we have some good questions coming into the chat. And please don't, into the Q&A, please don't put questions in the chat because they'll fly up the list. Keep them in the Q&A, please, and we'll pull them in just a moment. I wanted to reference an anecdote from the book that I found sort of humorous, but it also shows that it's okay, especially young in a career, to make mistakes. And you had mentioned in the book that you were told we got to hit certain sort of quota for catching speeders. You thought a good place to go is outside of a school zone. So you're sitting there with the radar gun, and tell us what happened. Finish the story for us.
Yeah, I had like a month and a half on the job. I was brand new. I was 21 years old. And so my sergeant said, hey, go out and run some radar. We need some tickets in Central Avenue area. So I said, okay, I'll go run them. So it was in the morning. And so I went out, I set up, and had all my uniforms all shiny. My hat looked good, a lot different as you get older. But I pulled over this car, and this lady, I told her I stopped her for speeding in a school zone, told her what she was going. And she argued with me a little bit, and this went back and forth, and she was stunned I was going to write her ticket. And finally, after a few minutes of conversation, I said, why are you so upset? I mean, you were speeding. You said you were going this fast. And I said, you were speeding in a school zone. And she looked at me and she said, officer, it's Sunday. So I stopped her for speeding. There was no school. It was Sunday. So I went back to my car and I threw my hat on the floor and said, this job ain't for me. And I went back and told some people, and they just said, laugh it off, man, it happened. So, but I admit I made a mistake and I messed up, and that's the kind of dumb stuff you do when you're younger. But I always laughed at that one. So I remember writing that years ago and just chuckling at it to this day.
But you grow from it, right? And,
Absolutely.
and any early in anybody's career, you're going to make mistakes. You're trying your best, and it happens, but you get back up, and there's the next day is a new opportunity, and you just sort of move on. So I just thought that was great. I enjoyed, the book has some pretty raw moments, a lot of bar fights, drug busts, things like that. And certainly it's there for teachers and students to see, but it's a very honest portrait of a day in the life. But as I get to some questions from students, I want to ask you, it paints a pretty raw picture. Some days are really hard. They're going to make you even question what you're doing with your life. Like, why am I even, but yet you persisted, you stayed in the job, you rose the ranks in the job. So despite how hard it was certain days, you stuck around. So what was that about? Why hang in there?
Because you have to love it. It's one of those careers you have to love. And I see, so we have some future attorneys in here. One of the things I always talk about in that book a lot is my relationship with attorneys. It's a love-hate relationship with attorneys, and some of my best friends are attorneys. But one of them, when I was really wanting to get out of it when I was a sergeant, they kind of talked me into staying into it. And they said, "Look what you've done. You've accomplished this. A lot of people can't do that." So, and this was a defense attorney that I went against in court all the time. So you just need to lean on people that you trust. Don't take your work home from you. If you're in criminal justice, don't take your work home with you. Learn to leave it at work, because that's the downfall of many police officers.
That's really good advice. We really like that honest practical advice in here as much as possible. Learn to leave it at work. That's a really good one. We have a lot of questions that are all kind of centering around the same theme. I want to kind of combine a few people. We have Amber Jones or her class. We have Brianna McCoy from Queens Technical High School asking questions like this. Basically, how do you get started? What is the first step you take if you want to enter criminal justice, law enforcement? Do you have to go through taking a test? Do you have to go through training? Do you have to get in shape? Like what comes first? Start there.
The first thing you need to do before you do anything is if you want to do this line of work, you need to make phone calls to the departments that you really like or really want to try to work for and see what their process is. Some require college degrees. Others do not require college degrees. Some require you to have the academy already. Others say, no, we'll send you to the academy. So you need to pick out the part you like and do your homework on it. Just call and ask or email them and say, what's your process? That's number one. Getting in shape and all that, I wouldn't worry about. You should always be in some type of good shape. Don't worry about that until you find out where you want to go. Some places don't even have physical testing anymore. Some do. So it just depends on the department. You can't go wrong with getting academy in or getting at least an associate's degree. I know if you want to get promoted a lot of places or become a police chief or something, you're going to need that. But to start off, call the places and reach out with interest of places you want to go and find out their process. Because I assure you, every process is different at every agency. Okay. Every process is different.
That's a good answer. Question here from Karina Monroe 2 Bosse's in New York. What previous experience looks good to hiring personnel?
The best thing I would tell you for that is people think you need to have like work in a jail or work in dispatch or something. No, if you have a degree in criminal justice, that really helps because that does show that you took the time and effort to get this to better your career. I would highly recommend that. As far as like experience, most people, young people, when again, don't have the experience. Just be one of these people that are constantly calling and emailing these chiefs or whoever their PIO is and asking them questions about the department. Tell them, I'm interested. What do I need to do to get here? That goes a long way more than a resume because the police recruiting in the country is down monumentally. So they're looking for people bad. So just show them how bad you want the job.
Wow. Great answer. It's a good question, kind of going back to our first conversation about when you were in the academy. Peyton Peak from Murray County High School. How much work did it take to get picked out of those 350 people to be one of those 5? What'd you have to do?
Well, it was hard. I mean, my interview skills are everything. And here's one thing, I'll give you a tip, a polygraph. A polygraph is a lie detector test. And those are pretty standard around the country for police hiring. Make sure you tell the truth. You say, well, that sounds easy. You know, people lie and think, well, if I smoked drugs or did weed when I was 17, they're not going to pick me. That's not true. They're looking to see if you're truthful about your past. I can tell you from being a chief and hiring hundreds of people that we've had people come in and did some really things that were messed up when they were younger. They were honest about it. We appreciate their honesty, and then it being long-term great police officers. Just be honest in your polygraph because if you're deceitful, it will show. Even if you've done something you're embarrassed about, just be honest. The other thing is your interview skills. Go in there and, like I said earlier, know where you're at, know who you're talking to. If you know the chief is Chief Johnson, look him up. Find out what he's doing. Find out how long he's been there. Know everything about the people that are interviewing you. That's important because you can relate to them better and know what they're about.
I love that you said that because we touch on that in every single session we do. You know, looking people up, knowing their backstory, being able to talk about their career. That's what what interviews are really all about. So I'm glad you said that. And for those of you who have our worksheet, maybe Mac, if you could share it one more time in the chat. We have a question about some of the lessons that you're learning from our guests. And I've already heard a few great things like leave it all at work. Don't bring it home. Be honest in the interview process and in the polygraph, right? So research people before the interview. This is good stuff. This is like the real deal stuff from someone who has hired hundreds of people and been in that chair. So this, this advice, you can take it to heart. We have a lot of really good questions here. Let's see if we can get this one without getting too raw. But Kayvon Roberts says, what's the most dangerous job you had?
Oh, undercover work. There was times I know we were followed home by cartel that were in our area. Wow. The undercover stuff, there's been times I've been in houses with 10 or 12 bikers from a biker gang. Back then I had long black hair, earrings. I looked a lot different. So I was in a room with them just hoping they didn't recognize me from being a police officer. That's always dangerous. I think any touch, but the average track stuff something bad can happen. But I never really was too concerned about those. But those undercover situations can be really bad.
Wow, because if they are on to you, you're already sort of trapped in that environment, like, and you're by yourself, and man, that would be really good. Question from Genesis Ortiz Lopez. What kind of preparation in high school or college, if we're interested in criminal justice? Are there certain classes you recommend that students take to just have a broad background in this field?
I wouldn't say necessarily high school, although some places like here in Ohio, we have a thing called like Butler Tech, and that's a trade school, and you can go take trade classes for that in high school. So there's things like that you can do. But high school, it's hard because you can't really be a policeman, at least here in Ohio, until you're 21. So they're really not going to look at high school. My best advice to you is get involved in an Explore program or something like that, which is kind of like volunteerism. And they teach you little stuff, how to park cars, how to do traffic stops, some cool stuff. But really just go to school. And if you go to college, get your degree in that. But if not, get your foot in the door by becoming a corrections officer or a dispatcher. And we would promote a lot of corrections officers and dispatchers to patrol when they turn 21.
Interesting.
So you can do that when you're 18. You don't need to go to college. And a lot of times we look at those employees first because they're already here and we know them and we know what they're about.
Wow. Raise your hand if you think that's just such a great idea. Who would have thought if you can become a dispatcher first at 18 and then work your way into a patrol? I mean, that's some advice that I think it would not be obvious to people right away. We have a question from Janae Love. How do you keep yourself grounded during tense situations?
Experience. When I was 21, 22 in the job, it was totally different. Sometimes, you fly off the handle during tense situations, you put hands on people. As you get older, you trade that passion for compassion, and you tend to look at things different and you become grounded over time. It's learning how to talk to people. You learn that over time. Experience. There's nothing better than experience in talking to people. So you're not going to have that when you're 21. You're just not. I've never seen a 21-year-old officer be the officer they was 10 years later, because you do improve with time. I just probably not the answer you're looking for, but that's just the best I could think of.
I think it's fair. I mean, you got to experience it once or twice to then know to get ready for it the next time. So that's probably the same in any career. And every career has tense moments, maybe not as life or death as police work, but there's always, high emotion in any job you're working in. We have a question here from Brianna McCoy. If you want to be a forensic scientist, do you need criminal justice experience?
No, you do not, but you do need to go to school for that. But I tell you, that job, it's a great field because not a lot of people want to do it. And police departments across the country are looking for people to do that. You don't have to have it, but I would highly recommend having experience or a degree to do that, because you're going to get a look before others if you have that.
Okay, that's good. We have a question from Katie Sane. She's a teacher at Murray County High School. What employability skills are lacking today in young hires? What do you notice about the soft skills, the communication skills, whatever you term it? What's missing?
I think patience, because I'm not one of these guys. I mean, I'm 52 years old, so I'm a Gen Xer. So people always crack on millennials that they don't want this, and that's millennials have some fantastic ideas. They're fresh ideas, and we need millennials to step into this.
And it's Gen Z now too. This next generation called Gen Z behind them.
Yeah. So we need that. But here's the thing. Sometimes I would deal with people, they would get hired and you interview them, they'll do whatever they can to get hired. But then after one, you're like, well, I don't want to work midnights anymore. I want to work day shift, or I want to be a detective. And it doesn't work like that in this line of work. It's based on your experience and able to get the job done. So a lot of times they leave the field because they don't have the patience to wait for that to come to them. So you have to be patient in law enforcement, because you just do. It's like that in a lot of jobs, but specifically that experience means everything. So as far as being employed, the employability, patience. Be patient. It'll come to you if you do a good job. It really will, I tell you. So be patient with it. That's what I recommend.
That was a question similar. I want to just continue to say students' names and thank them for their questions. Kiara Meek, Riverside High School in Iowa, asked that, something you would tell new recruits. It's probably along those lines, be patient. It'll come. The experience will come as you go through the job. We have an anonymous person, but it's another very specific question. I just like how these students are really thinking about working in this space, and they want to know, does working as an intelligence analyst for law enforcement require the police academy?
No, it does not. We would use the FBI a lot for that. like when we would do federal cases out of where I'm at, we would always contract with the FBI. They'd come in, they'd bring intelligence analysts, and their work was phenomenal. I would, if I was getting into that line of work, I would go through the FBI. That's my best advice, not local police departments. Maybe the bigger city ones, New York, Chicago, but the FBI, because then you can go work anywhere. And but that's the route I would go if I'm going to do that.
Okay. Question from Mark.
Look up their information.
Oh, sure. Question from Mark Beitler. What can officers do to protect their mental health during a long career? Now, maybe you can talk about journaling here as one answer, because that's what ended up becoming a book. But I'll let you answer that the way you want.
That's a great question, because that book delves a lot into that. I told you before we went on air that when I started writing the book, I wrote for fun. 30 years of journaling, and then I was writing for therapy. And there was times where if I didn't write, I was going to drink. And sometimes you do both, because you see, I've seen a lot of child homicides. I've seen a lot of sexual assault. I've seen a lot of some bad things, So my best advice is, number one, like I said, don't take it home with you. You'll take it out on your wife and family if you do. You'll get upset with things. The other thing is find an outlet to talk to, whether it's a minister, somebody outside of police work, a friend, somebody you trust. And once every few weeks, get with them and just talk to them about what's going on in your life, so you can be grounded. Police officers are really bad in America for taking their work home and stressing over things they can't control. I still have dreams to this day. I talk about in the book, nightmares about homicides we didn't solve when I was the chief, and it stays with you, so you'll never lose that. But what you have to do is know that there's people out there that will help you. Do not let it bottle in. You got to get it out of your system, whether it's a minister, pastor, counselor, somebody. That's the best advice I can give. Don't hold it, because people that are generally type A personalities, and they don't think that that's cool. They think it's too much to do that, but you need to do that. You have to have that outlet.
Like it's not okay to ask for help. You hear that a lot, or men and women, right? I mean, it would go both ways. Do you think more women are likely to seek help? Men think they're too proud, or is it everybody in the space?
Yeah, I had a lot of women officers that would seek help more quickly than men, and that's just because they're smarter. I mean, they really are. I mean, men they just are, and men think that we're invincible, and we're not. And women are smarter than that. They know they're not, and they'll go get help, and that's why they succeed a little bit more than men when it comes to that.
Wow, interesting. Question from Monica Bautista. What would you tell yourself when you felt like giving up, when things got too hard? Early in your career, late in your career, wherever it happened, you had those moments like, I think I'm done. And then came back to work the next day. How did you work through that?
Yeah. The number one thing is I'm just going to tell you, is I knew this is what I was born to do. And I talk about in the book, there's only two things in life I was ever told I was good at, and that was basketball.
Saw that.
And policing. And I just knew when I got into it that this is what I was meant to do, and there was nothing else I wanted to do. And eventually you won't feel like that after 30 years like I did, but you just don't do it because you're here for a purpose, and people depend on you. And the cool thing is, I'm telling you, there was people that I helped 25 years ago that I don't remember. I don't know their names, and I'll see them at Target, or I'll see them at, Kroger, the grocery store, and they'll come up and say, hey, you remember 20 years ago you came to my house and I never forgot that? It's amazing. You hear that all the time and you don't even remember them. But you help people more than you know, and it's worth it, I'm telling you.
Wow. Another good question, Kayvon Roberts, thank you for your comments. What is the pay like? And be as specific as you're able to be, or you can. Just give us some ranges when you come in, or different roles. What is it? What's the expectation with pay?
Well, the pay, right, departments have bonuses now. So if you get hired on, they'll give you a bonus that if you stay there a certain year, you'll get $10,000 or whatever. But the average, the pay right now in Ohio, the average is probably for a patrol officer starting maybe $65,000 a year. Some departments pay more, some pay less, but that's about the average. Like as a chief, I think my final year I made $122,000 as a chief, but that was a 60-hour-a-week job. So if you break it down like that,
you earned
the
that.
average, but you get court pay and things like that. Like, so if you're off on your day off, or you work midnights, you have court, you're going to get overtime for that. So the pay can be really good if you want it to be. And there's always off-duty jobs. So, you work high school football games, you work high school basketball games, there's concerts in your area. They hire policemen to do security. So the money you can make on the side, I know people who made up to $25,000 a year on the side, on top of their salary.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, and right now they're paying high because they're having trouble getting applicants.
And why are they having trouble?
Oh, I'd say the number one, the climate. You have one person, one cop do something stupid in Minnesota, what he did, it affected everybody. All of a sudden, the media loves you, and then they hate you, and then the public hates you, but that goes in cycles. I was a new officer when the Rodney King thing happened in Los Angeles in 1991, I believe, or 92. We felt that in Ohio because of that, because of what those guys did out there. So it's one of the few professions where somebody can do something 2,000 miles away and it affects you here, and it truly does. So, and with social media, if you do something wrong as a police officer, within 30 seconds, you're on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, you're all over the place. So I think a lot of people don't want to even fool with that, and that's why they do it.
Yeah,
they don't do it. I mean, yeah.
I understand what you're saying. It's you can just be a patrol officer in any city in the country, but you can be on the national news 2 hours later if something happens. And so it's incredibly high profile in every single town. It can all escalate so quickly because you're wearing the uniform, and there is a lot of pressure around that. So I understand. A question from Denise Hunt. Do all detectives need to start as patrol officers?
Generally, yes, they do, because you get your experience as a patrol officer. I know where I was at, it was 5 years. You had to have 5 years on patrol before you could apply for a detective position. Now, I will tell you, I got sent to special operations, which was narcotics, in my second year. That's a little bit different because we're looking for young, fresh faces to do undercover work. But I didn't do that. I did that for a year and then went back to patrol until I had the time on to become a detective.
Okay. A good question here. I think it's from a student named Lucas. It's from Desert Hot Springs High School. What law enforcement skills have you learned that you bring into your everyday life, or you bring now to city council, to real estate? What have you transferred to the work you do today?
Two things. The number one thing in the world that's most important in the world, and I tell people when it comes to being a police officer and how it transfers to life, is empathy. Have empathy for others who do not have what you have, and always put yourself in their shoes. When people call the police, sometimes police get upset and they'll be rude and they'll say, well, gosh, I've been to this house 4 times. Well, if you lived in that house, maybe you would understand it. Try to have empathy, and you take that with you when you leave. With my clients now, and what I do with city council, I always have empathy for the public and what they're going through. That's the number one thing that I take. That's what I took from being a police for 30 years, is put yourself in other people's shoes in any position you're in. Wow. And it does translate to regular life. It really does.
Wow. Well, students, what word did he just use? The E is an E word. That the skill that he's taken from police work to the rest of his career, empathy. Thank you. So important. I think what a great answer. And I had a question a student asked about, where do we submit our worksheet? It's not really to submit to us. It's more for you to have, and you can turn it into your teacher if they'd like. But it's just a way to follow, because there's advice spilling out all over this conversation. There's so much good stuff here learned through experience. Like Rodney said, I mean, this is 30 years of just being in it, and he's sharing it back with all of us, which is just really what a privilege to do. What I'd like to do is take a quick break from the questions. Rodney, stay with us. And we're going to talk about, as one of the teachers was asking, about employability skills. I'm going to share my screen. We do this as much as we can in our sessions so that we help students with communication. I am sharing with you a worksheet. Hold on. That we talk about the use of I. Teachers, how many times in student emails or documents or essays are they not using capitalization? Lowercase i's, lowercase u, the letter U instead of Y-O-U. So what I want us to do, I'm going to highlight a short phrase from this worksheet right here. Hopefully everyone can see this. Students, I want you to go to the chat, and I want you to rewrite the part I've highlighted with proper capitalization, proper spelling, and a period. Can you do that for me, please? Can you show Rodney, who is someone who would be reviewing applications, that you know how to write a complete sentence and not text speak for all instances? Because we didn't even really get into how much writing is involved in police work. And you come back to your desk after you're out on patrol, you have to write reports, and it has to make sense to someone else. I have a cousin who's a police officer here in Virginia, and he's oversees a team, and he's like, the writing is so bad today that it's almost unintelligible what people are writing after they're out on patrol. So maybe as students write these sentences, Rodney, what is your thought on being able to write clearly in this job?
It's everything. It's your word on paper. So if you go into court, and I've had officers go into court, and attorneys, good defense attorneys, will just pick you apart if you don't have a good report, because they're going to show that you're
Wow.
incompetent or you are unable to do the job. And your word in court is everything. Well, your word on paper is still your word. So that's held for years. That never goes away. You got a report in 1991. That report stands in 2020. So you have to be very meticulous and know what you're doing. Good grammar. Make sure you use the right punctuation, the right words. It's everything. Be able to comprehend what you're writing.
Thank you for that answer, because I was just having this discussion with my cousin who again oversees a team, and he's like, it's really becoming a problem, a dangerous almost, to write this poorly after you're recapping what you just did out there, which we could end up being used in court. And so, as much as any job we talk about in here, writing is essential in police work, because it's going to be used in these real life moments beyond just an email that goes. And even in any other job, anything can be, it's once it's written, it's recorded forever. It can be brought into a court case. So I'm glad we touched on that with the policing, because man, it is really serious to not be too casual in this space. I wanted to ask you, as we have about 8-9 more minutes in our conversation, I wanted to ask you about the movie Hillbilly Elegy and the book. Has anybody here read the book or seen the movie Hillbilly Elegy? Can I see a show of hands? Is anybody familiar with that movie? Amy Adams was the star. The book was a bestseller. Tell us the connection to the book, to the author, to the movie, and how it all focuses on Middletown, where you worked and live today.
Yeah, the author is J.D. Vance, and he grew up in Middletown, and we have his family and my family have kids that all played sports together growing up. And J.D.'s a lot younger than me, but he wrote this book, and he ended up going to Yale. His mom was an addict. He had a poor family. The book's about how his grandmother sacrificed and the family sacrificed so he could go to Yale. And he came back, and he lives in the area now near Cincinnati.
Oh,
But he wrote this. Yeah, he wrote this incredible book, Hillbilly Elegy. A lot of people don't like it. It's about Appalachia because they think it doesn't really fit the true Appalachia, but it's his own experiences. So that's in our city. And then Ron Howard bought the rights to it with Imagine Entertainment, and they made the movie. They filmed it partially in Middletown, but the movie, if you watch it, that's Middletown. That's where I'm at now. That's where I grew up at. That's what my book is about. So it's one of these things where it's just a great opportunity to look at what's like growing up in the Midwest with addiction and poverty and things like that. I mean, it's exactly to a T what it's like.
Wow. And you said that parts of Hillbilly Elegy, the movie, were filmed in Middletown, and you were on set. If anybody's seen the movie, when Amy Adams runs out of her house in this frantic scene, tell us about that experience for you.
Yeah, it's weird. It was over on Franklin Street, which was a couple of streets over from where the actual event took place. But there's a scene in the movie where she attempts suicide and comes out going crazy and screams and just having all kinds of issues with Glenn Close, who was playing her grandmother or her mother. And me and my daughter, we were on set. We were invited on set when I was the police chief. And so we watched them film that. They did that take 18 times.
Oh my gosh, what?
Yeah. Yeah, and you watch it on the TV, it's like an 8-second scene. So it was pretty phenomenal and surreal to see it on our streets happening, and to see Ron Howard there directing it. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
My daughter, she's a college student. She really loved it. So, but yeah, it's a great opportunity. You got to check out the book or the movie if you get an. I know it was number one on Netflix for a long time.
And I think it really helps, reading your book and just reading the experiences. It maybe helps to add some color, bring to life some of the things that you're describing that police officers have to go through when you're dealing with people who are going through whatever they're going through, and they're just melting down. Right. And I mean, to think that she did that scene 18 times, because just the raw acting, like laying your soul out there to do that. That's really, we don't appreciate actors. We think they get, we just see the one take in the movie. We don't think about all the times they didn't get it right, because wow, that scene and her acting is like mesmerizing.
Yeah, she's really good. Yeah, she's good.
Yeah, she is a pro. I want to share my screen once more to offer the resources to teachers. Then we'll come back with some final thoughts from Rodney after a fantastic conversation. Truly, like, this is really what it's all about in here for us. So again, for those who came in just a bit after I said it, the teachers, this is for educators in our room right now. We have a Google Drive folder of free exercises for life skills: shaking hands, holding conversation, taking a headshot, signing your name, emailing your teacher appropriately about a poor grade, learning to respect the opinions of others, which is something you would use every day on the force in your interacting with the public. So we'd love to give you those resources, as well as an online presentation checklist of some quick tips to remember before, during, and as you're speaking and leading a session virtually. And if you missed this offer and you'd like these resources, please just go to the chat right now, type the word interested and your email address for the educators here. And if you're new to the Rubin community, what we like to do is send you a Google or send you a calendar invite for Thursday or Friday, just for 5 minutes. If the time doesn't work, just suggest another time. It's no big deal. We'll chat for just a moment, pass these resources along to not only you, but also your school, and help you make the most of our exercises. So please enter that if you'd like. Reminder that in 2 weeks' time, we are covering the world of sports medicine with Janet Katz, who's a certified athletic trainer at a high school outside of Washington, D.C. that produces a lot of D1, D2 athletes. So she's always helping students with their sport of choice. If you are watching on a recording, please email us at the email in red with the subject line you see, and we will send you the worksheets that way. And finally, some of you were asking in the chat, I was trying to catch that chatter, that we are sending a worksheet out on Thursday. You will be able to type your students' names into the certificate. The certificate. They'll type their name into it, make a new copy, type a new name. So you can control that on your end. We don't need to know who they are. It'll come to you. You can fill it out for them, or they can fill it out themselves, and they'll have their own unique copy of the certificate. Okay. So look out for all of those things coming to your email, your calendar, whatever it is. Just keep an eye out, especially the invitations to chat that'll come later this afternoon. So look for your invite for that. Now, let's just wrap up. We have just a few more minutes with our guest, and we want to get everybody out of here at 2:15 Eastern. You can get back to your day. So Rodney, what are some closing thoughts? You have a lot of students here that are clearly very interested in this field. They've thought a lot about it. They're exploring it. They want to understand it. Give us some parting wisdom as they begin their journey as you did 30 years ago.
You just have to find, whether it's police work or whatever you're doing criminal justice wise, make sure that you're doing what's going to make you happy, because it is a job that can really take from you mentally and physically, but also gives you a lot. So you have to make sure that's what you want to do. You can never stop learning either. That, as a police, I was still going to conferences and classes and training after 30 years, because it changes much. This career evolves. The other thing that I think we didn't talk about is social workers. Social workers are a huge part of policing now. And I'm a big believer when we deal with the mentally ill, we have a lot of that here in Middletown, is I think it's awesome you have able to take a social worker with you as a police officer to help you with that call, because they're the experts. We're not the experts on mental illness. So that's a big part of policing that you're going to start seeing, where social workers are incorporated into that line of work. But just do what makes you happy. Don't be one of these people that do it because somebody's pressing you or you feel you have to. Just do it because it makes you happy. And it's a very rewarding career if you want it to be.
That's great.
Also, if you have questions that you couldn't get answered and have time, look me up on social media. I'm all over it. Just my name on Facebook or Twitter. And I'll be more than happy to answer your questions if we couldn't get to them, if you would like.
Appreciate you saying that. Yes, students, there's an open invitation to reach out to him through his, start your research now. Look him up, find him, do that homework yourself. You want to be a detective one day, you got to start somewhere. And so ask him your questions beyond today. We had over 60 questions in the chat. I tried to get to as many as I could. So there's so many questions surrounding this occupation, this field, and I hope we hit on a lot for students today. Can we show some hands up for Rodney? It's kind of like an applause, not really, but let's see some hands up to say thank you for sharing his time with us. He's a very busy guy, real estate, city council. He didn't stop after retirement, and we appreciate him being here. And teachers, I would encourage you to check out the book, bring some of these anecdotes that are appropriate for school into the class to really get an inside look, an honest account of what it is to work in this job every day. I've enjoyed reading it, and so please find it on Amazon. It's called The Blue View.
It's also on iTunes.
I should have had your I should have had your Amazon link queued up. I'm sorry. I don't have it ready to throw in
No,
the
I
chat.
should have got it to you. It's also on
Yeah.
iTunes and Audible if you like the sound, the audio
Yeah.
versions.
The blue view, you'll find it. And I would encourage you to read it. So again, thank you everyone for being here. We hope to see you in 2 weeks for sports medicine. Thank you, Rodney. Thank you, Katie Swift,
Yeah,
for
thank
all
you.
of your work. And we'll see you in February.